was like, you are a black woman. You are not cleaning up after people. Sometimes environment really does put people at a disadvantage that can be life ending. What I was doing and put it in a completely different neighborhood environment context, I might not be here today. Teenage pregnancy. I have a friend that had to go through. I have privilege. If you don't know what my conviction chats are, it's a playlist here that I created where when I'm convicted, like when something is really, really, really on me, on my spirit, I come and chat about it. So I was in the process of doing a lot of rebranding, doing all that stuff, like working. It's a Monday for me. Those are usually my days, and I feel like this is when I get convicted. And I put on a video, and I might pop it up. What it is, she's talking about, and I think it's by Manifestel. Give me a half a second. She's going over the science of being love bombed. I haven't finished the video yet. However, I got to a point where she said something along the lines of mistakes are one of the hallmarks of privilege. Now, follow me here. I have had so many conversations, I feel like this past year, when it comes to privilege, because while I typically use words like I'm blessed, I am covered and things like that, I actually had to start thinking about my privilege. Of course, we all have our plights in life and things like that. Well, the original conversation, I don't know if I spoke on this in a video by now, posted it, but I really started to think about my privilege when one time I went hiking with the two girls I always go hiking with, two of my friends, and we were talking about things like hair. I had just locked my hair, and we were talking about traveling, how I say I feel like traveling is one of like the best experiences you can give to a person, a kid, things like that. I told them when it comes to like code switching and things like that, I've never felt the need to do that because I don't want to be in spaces where I have to not be myself. And we got into the conversation of you have to get to a point where, yes, you may be a different version of yourself. In a professional setting, you're a different version of yourself. Maybe in parenting, you're a different version of yourself. And with the locks thing, I was like, I've never been discriminated based on my hair, or I've never had huge problems when it comes to my race. And I realized that's my, because one of them looked at me like, what? Because she worked deeply in corporate America. And I realized, and I said this, maybe that's my privilege talking. And by privilege, I mean, I had, because there's different types of privileges. So I had, because I had to look it up, like, what kind of privilege is that, right? And there's different types. So I guess you got financial and things like that. For my last video y'all saw, when I was talking about overachieving and things, I was born or raised in a certain economic status. Like my mom provided that, my family provided that. So there are certain privileges that comes with having certain means, being in certain environments. I don't have to change too much the way that I speak because it's natural to me already. I am interested in like linguistics and language and English, and I, you know, if you've been here long enough, I don't always talk proper English. But so I started to realize like, wow, because I thought that a lot of people travel. That's what I'm used to. How I grew up, I've been traveling since I can remember, right? Domestically and internationally. And I was surrounded by people. Now I grew up with cousins and family and things like that who didn't, but where I spent a bulk of my time with my peers and classmates and things like that, even going to high schools and stuff like that, I was always around people in the same socioeconomic status, and I was always around people who were also well traveled. So I thought it was normal, and I have to give that to, there's a certain privilege. I have a privilege in that way, and I hope I never have to eat my words. I am very aware of racial disparity and income and all that stuff, and I have empathy, and I'm able to still speak on the topics, be involved, and be around people that don't have the, I won't say as privileged, that don't have the privileges that I have, because I feel like maybe we all have different privilege. You have pretty privilege, you have financial privilege, there's so many different privileges. However, being cultivated instead of raised, cultivated in such a way where intellect was important, networking was important, how you present yourself, and not having to face certain discriminatory or discrimination, like those kind of things, also helped me see a way, think about this, because it's not like, oh my gosh, racism doesn't exist, oh my gosh, sexism doesn't exist. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that as somebody that's been traveling since they were very young, I've been exposed to a lot of different cultures, not necessarily lifestyles, but cultures, right? And so because of that, I think very young, I've been able to see the humanity in people beyond race, beyond economic status too, beyond, you know, those kind of things. And so for me, even to this day, certain things when it's revolved around maybe, oh, you're at a disadvantage because you're a woman, you're at a disadvantage because you're black, I can understand it systemically. However, because it doesn't align specifically with my experience, I don't take it that deep into consideration when something doesn't go through for me. And that could be it. But you know what my thinking is? Hey, if you don't hire me, or you don't want to work with me, or blah blah blah, because my hair is locked, or because of the color of my skin, or because I'm a woman, this is not where I need to be anyway. That in itself, I am realizing, or have realized as I got older, is a privilege. To be able to turn down opportunity because of certain things is a privilege. And again, I'm very aware and I'm very happy I have that privilege, and it still is a blessing. But beyond the blessing, I was able to have that environment. I still have that environment as a grown person. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this. I remember when I went to work in housekeeping, nothing wrong with it. My mom was like, and it was so weird because to me, I was just like, you know, I don't care. Like, I don't move through the world race first. I just don't. I don't do that. I don't move through the world woman first. I think if I was to move, picking one, it probably would be woman first. But she was like, I went and got a job. This is like my daughter was first born. What I realized that I got from my mom, and shout out to her, that I try to provide for my daughter, is that she's made an environment to where I don't have, she's made, my mom is not a do whatever it takes to make money. And I think that's also why I will not just do anything for money. But again, I think that all children, all people should have that privilege, but they don't. And I'm realizing that, where she was just like, to her, because I don't have the kind of mother that's like, oh, you can live with me, or I'll buy you this thing, and then she throws it in your face later, right? And I know some people have those circumstances. Again, I guess that's also privilege, where she's like, oh, this is so hard for me to explain, because I don't want to, really and truly, I don't think there's anything, my camera's about to die. I really and truly, which is crazy because I just charged this, I'm probably gonna have to switch cameras, and I'll jump back into the whole housekeeping thing. Give me 1 second. Lord be offense. Every time I do these conviction chats, I do have an issue. All right, had to switch over because my camera died. That, I'm telling you, that's what I was saying. This happens in these conviction chats because, you know, I'm gonna say the adversary be trying to get me, you know, whatever. So what I was saying was, let me just move, because I want y'all to understand my heart. I'm not saying housekeeping and stuff like that is wrong. However, because I've always had a complicated relationship when it came to like race and stuff and gender and stuff, because I was also taught, and I guess privileged, in the sense that I was not allowed to use things I am not able to change as roadblocks. I was not able to do that. To me, I was just like, I want extra money. The privilege that I didn't have to work somewhere in order to make ends meet. I have to work here or I'm going to be homeless. I full and well understand that. However, I believe that I also unknowingly before, more intentional now, but before, did not abuse or misuse my privilege or leverage it in a bad way, because although I knew I can go live with my mom, I can go do this, or I can ask for money, I can do all these things, I don't have to go work at a hotel. My daughter was like a newborn. I wanted to go and make extra money. Like, I was okay. My family is fine. I didn't have to. However, my mom was like, you're working where? And when she found out I was housekeeping at a hotel, she said, you are a Black woman. I don't even know if she said in America, but she was like, you are a Black woman. You are not cleaning up after people. And I was grown, so I could have said no, but something in that was like, you need to quit. And I did the first day. I was like, what are you talking about? It's a job. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm just trying to go get a job, bro. Like, what are we going on about? So, you know, I'm like, what? And so that has stuck with me for the longest, because even after she said it, I was like, you're doing a lot, but I don't know. For some reason, that one time I just trusted her instinctually to go. And I don't know if it's maybe because I really didn't want to do it. And it's like, if you tell me to quit, girl, are you going to fill in the gap of the extra money that I want kind of thing? But that was that. And so having a parent who set me up in a way where as long as you're pursuing something, as long as you're doing something beneficial, and now that I'm a parent, parenting is always a job and responsibility, but having a parent that's always like, whether you're school, work, you're doing something to better yourself, kind of what I would probably call purpose work. Like, as long as you're doing that, you will always have a place. Like, I'll always have a place. And I still work now where I have to get out that mode of like, don't be acting like these entitled trust fund kind of kids kind of like things. But having that environment allowed me, not when I was super young, again, if y'all ever heard the overachieving video, not in the sense of I was allowed to make mistakes. I was not allowed to make many mistakes when I was super young, but it allowed me to focus on me as an individual. It allowed me to focus on me in terms of sharpening my skills, focusing on my school. Like, some children, and y'all, you know, I'm emotional. It kind of makes me want to cry a little bit that people don't have this. And I've studied things in like sociology and things like that, and it sucks that sometimes environment really does put people at a disadvantage that can be life ending, really, or you know what I'm saying. And so I was always able to focus on that. I didn't have to worry about, and not saying to all people, and I'm not like, I feel a super pity or nothing like that. I never had the plight of, what are we eating today? I have a friend that had to go through this, and I had cousins, but having a friend and actually talking to her about the fact of like children who have to go to school and they have to worry about fighting. You can't even focus on your studies if you wanted to, because the likelihood of you getting into a fight is so high. You're fighting all the time. And so I'm sure you're probably honing in on those skills. You know what I'm saying? To survive. Like, my survival was like surviving in a school that required you to have a certain GPA. My survival wasn't somebody physically hurting me or me feeling like it was a very high chance of me having to do that. And so I was able to focus on my studies. And again, if you haven't watched the overachieving video, or the video where I talk about, now that I think about it, kind of like that perfectionist thing, or being the gifted child thing and growing up, it does have its pitfalls, but it also breeds this determination where you're not going to tell me that I'm not getting something because of the color of my skin, or because I'm a woman, or because my hair is locked. I understand the importance of being neat, being professional and showing up a certain way. But I also had the privilege, when I felt like it, to be shaving my hair off, cutting my hair off, dyeing my hair. Just recently, in recent times, because I did self-work on why I was that person that wanted to like dye my hair and cut it off and do all these things and, you know, get a bunch of tattoos and stuff like that. But just now do I even kind of think about that stuff. But I have never, when I dyed my hair off, cut my hair off and dyed it like this rosy color or whatever, I never thought, oh my gosh, if I do this thing with my appearance, if I do this thing, I'm not going to be accepted. If I do this thing, I'm not going to get a job. That never crossed my mind. And now I'm realizing that is a certain level of privilege. However, I also knew that sometimes in my rebellion, I used to do those things because then I also wanted to show up and show that, yeah, I have tattoos, and yeah, I shave my hair off and it's blonde here and black, That has nothing to do with my character. In some subtle ways, I wanted to break certain stigmas because I'm coming in qualified, and this is not a boastful thing. Just factually, I'm coming in qualified, educated. I speak properly because I understand English. I've been in sales. Like, I am not limited by whatever society thinks and stuff like that. So I want to show you there are people like that. It does not matter if my hair is pink, brown, yellow, green, whatever. And I think I had that about me before, like 2025, before it was, okay to be this overly expressive. But again, as I've gotten older, I realized that is a privilege that my mom afforded me. Even when, like, I've never been into super partying, sneaking out, doing none of that. But even when I would do things that were risky as a teenager, I was still doing it 9 times out of 10 in environments that were not highly dangerous. I still had some kind of street smarts about me, but if you take what I was doing and put it in a completely different neighborhood environment context, I might not be here today, you know? So I realized that that is a privilege. And so that quote really, or when she brought that up, and I wanted to stop because I wanted to, when I felt convicted and I started doing research and I saw there's a book about privilege and all this stuff. And before I start doing research, and maybe I'll write a Medium article, or maybe I'll do some other video about it. I wanted to kind of have my own thoughts, because this is something that has come up in many of my conversations in this past year with multiple people. So from those friends to my other friend, who's like my best friend, where I realized how different our experiences were. And I feel like I started sounding like a super privileged person that was not aware of their privilege. Like I said, where I'm like traveling, like you don't travel and stuff like that. Now my mom is in the travel industry and things like that. Why I don't feel the same pressure and stigma around certain things that other people do, because I understand that my family structure and certain privileges are different than some of my now adult like peers that I was growing up with, and then maybe like up to high school, but peers that I was growing up with, most of them have the same kind of experience where we don't have that cultural Black experience where you're getting kicked out just because you're 18. Oh, get out of my house, go to college, get a bunch of debt. And again, no shade. I actually had my daughter a lot younger than those peers that I grew up with. I was an adult, but there was not this big thing around teenage pregnancy. There was not like it. I have privilege. And I think I always knew, but I think maybe because I never took it as like, oh, I'm better than you because of privilege. I never took it as I'm better than you because of my privilege. Maybe that's why it wasn't a big thing. That's why I used to think conversations around racism and certain things were so dumb, because I'm like, yo, it's just skin. Like, and me realizing, one, history. I just now started getting into history. I'm going to be very honest. It used to be very boring for me. And then it's just like, yo, this problem when it comes to like racism and this and that, if you get out and you travel and you go into other cultures, and not saying now I know not that other cultures don't have the same like colorism and racism, like that kind of thing. But when you get out and you realize that race, like there are social things that are more prevalent in certain races, but that's because of socially. You're not born no different. I don't believe, and just based on things that I've researched and stuff, you're not just inherently different because you were born a different color or a different race, which is a social construct. Anyway, it's a social construct. And so for it to be such a thing that you can't control, for it to be such a thing where it does not affect your personality, it only affects your personality and stuff because of the social implications of being that race, or being a woman, a man, or whatever, because that just happens to be what you are. But you are not inherently a specific thing because you were born with brown skin or a certain color skin or whatever. It's a social thing, right? And so I realized that I now have to be more intentional when it comes to privilege. And just, I think I felt some guilt before, because I was like, oh my gosh, I am privileged. And I know that there's people with more privilege in the same areas I have privilege. I know people have other privileges in areas that maybe that, I don't know, I don't have and whatever. But I started to feel guilty about it, because I don't ever want to sound ignorant. I'm judging somebody, or like it sounds like I'm better because of the privilege. I genuinely just thought that certain things just go together. Like when you're educated in this and this and this and that, I think I just kind of thought certain privileges go with other certain privileges, and I'm learning that that's not the case. Or even just having a certain outlook or view on life comes from some privileges you may have been afforded. Even when I had got back into dating, and I went over the same things. Corporate, like it's a balance between I can work in corporate, but I'm quitting. Like when I tell somebody like I would not cut my hair off if they were like, you can't have locks, this and that, I'm not doing that. I'm not saying that now in this age, maybe if they said cut your hair off or quit, I'm not doing that. But I also have the privilege of falling back on something. I can go to my family and people that, you know what I'm saying, and they would help me out in that period of time, to where I don't have to cut my hair off or conform to this extreme, ridiculous standard just to have a job. but I have the privilege of that. Just like, I guess it's a privilege to have family backing, when I feel like these are things that you're born into a family. You're not born you don't come out of thin air. So it's like, I think I have some of the privileges that naturally I feel like all human beings should just have. However, I'm realizing that's not the case. But that was a big part of it. I said the dating thing. When I grew up a certain way, you have some people that do grow up in a certain socioeconomic status, and I was dating somebody where we were in that, right? We grew up in the same thing. And I'm not just talking about now socioeconomic status, because I've done research on socioeconomic status, and your socioeconomic status could be higher than what mine is at the moment, but your mindset is going to be different. Because say that your socioeconomic status was lower all your life and you just came into it. I think that's why we see people who obtain millions of dollars and all this stuff, and their mindset doesn't change. Whereas my mindset was in the socioeconomic status it was in. So now when I'm not in that, my mindset doesn't change, right? And so I ended up dating somebody that was in the same socioeconomic status. Certain things flowed, but other things I had to realize that, okay, while we might have had the same socioeconomic status, we had different experiences when it came to being a man and a woman. I have Black parents. We had differences when it's like 2-parent household or having the 2 biological parent household. I've always been pretty much in a 2-parent household, but having your biological parents, they have a parent that is non-Black, and then they have a like Caribbean Black parent, and I just have African American parents, which I call them. And because of that, things were different. Like, some people in my socioeconomic status or background, very linear. And though I was raised, I hate saying raised, cultivated in a way where it was very, go to school, be educated, be articulate, Black excellence, go to college, do this, do that, be amazing, right? I also have a background where I also needed to be a good person. It wasn't all about accolades, and I realize that now. Now, I think I put a lot of onus on that, but my mom also made it clear that don't nobody care about you being pretty. Like, you just gonna be a cute dummy kind of thing. Integrity mattered. We're not lying. We're not doing none of that. Like, integrity matters. So I also came from a different background of spirituality, or because I wouldn't say religion, but there's a religion component, spirituality, integrity, and stuff like that. And while I was heavily defined by my accomplishments academically, as time went on too, I needed to also be a decent person. And that's where me in the dating in that socioeconomic status differed, where I ended up switching and focusing more on me as a human being. And I said I've always been that way. I've always kind of fought back against stuff. I used to dye my hair, get tattoos and stuff like that, because you are not going to tell me my character and who I am, and whether I'm a good or bad person, stuff is not going to change because of how I look. Or I can go make a lot of money, still be a terrible person. I can go do this and still be a terrible person. I can have quote unquote whatever status and not be a good person, or vice versa. And so, yeah, I just thought that was really interesting, because I will say, I guess certain social, environmental, socioeconomic status gave me the privilege to where I did have room to make certain mistakes. And some people, I don't have room for that. I don't have the room to make a mistake. Some people literally lose their life because they don't have the privilege of making mistakes. And I feel like, especially children, should have that room to be human and make mistakes. And I'm realizing that the privilege in that is when you grow up in an environment where one tiny mistake, meaning taking the wrong turn, or like certain things, can literally cost you your life. And I just think that's very interesting. And I wanted to say it again because I have been having so many conversations around privilege. And I also want to say that I don't think having privilege is inherently wrong over other people. I honestly think we all have privilege. And I can never say 100%. Obviously, there are situations where you have no privilege. I'm trying to think, and then I'm born there's American privilege. There's all kind of privilege, right? So I don't know. But I think in some ways, people have at least one privilege. And it made me think about privilege and power. That's why when people say with great something, what is it? I put it, I don't know, great something comes great responsibility, like that kind of thing. That's why I don't chase the power thing. I still am aware that I'm human. Like, I have a certain power, privilege, whatever, over when I'm a parent. You have to be aware. It does nobody any good for you to ignore that you have privilege or have power in a situation, because you need to know. And of course, some things you might not just do because it's just not in you, but you have to not be so arrogant to think that you would not abuse power or a certain privilege, right? You need to know what privilege you have. You need to know where you have power. You need to know where you have advantages so that you can intentionally leverage it if you're going to leverage it. Because I think you should leverage your privilege and power and stuff. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, whether it's for a political cause, whether it's for personal gain, whether it's to help your family, whatever the case may be. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's like, I don't have a issue with like nepotism in a sense of what it means, or the idea I have of it, where it's like you have obtained certain things to be able to put your kids ahead of the curve or give them certain privileges or whatever. That's kind of the idea I have of it, soft, whatever, I don't know, whatever. But with that, I feel as though you have to be aware of it in order to cultivate it properly, in order to leverage it properly. Or if you don't want to leverage it, if you feel like you have a certain privilege or power or something that you just don't want to, I feel like you still need to be aware, be cognizant so that you don't. Without that, abuse occurs. Without that, harm just kind of occurs. And so, yeah, I don't think it's bad. I think it's something to be aware of. I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of. Again, there's so many different types of privileges. I'm not going to get into that because I didn't do that super deeper research, but there are certain types of privilege. And so I just thought that was interesting, because for me, I think the traveling and being cultured in the way of learning about different cultures and all that stuff has allowed me to enter into spaces where my privilege, I don't just inherently think I'm better than somebody. If I think I'm better in some area as somebody, I always say, as I did in the gifted video, I'm going to say it is not because I was born that way. It is because I took the time to work on said thing. I took the time to obtain a skill or work on a thing and cultivate that thing. And that would be why I am better at something, right? Some other things, I'm just aware that I was put ahead of the curve, or I had an advantage over others because of what I was born into. So I think that's pretty much it. Before I go on a super crazy ramble, I just really needed to get that out, because it's like this thing where people are either ignorant to privilege and power that they have, they just don't know, or they're very like, it's not my fault that I have privilege, it's not my fault that my parents, it's not this, and there's nothing wrong with that. You are absolutely right. You did not ask to be born into a super wealthy family. You didn't ask to be born in a super safe environment. You were born to what society may view as more aesthetically pleasing, you know, but you can leverage it for good instead of weaponizing it. And also don't have to take on a self-deprecating angle or guilt trip yourself or be like, I'm no good. Like, have humility. Of course, I believe in humility. Again, I don't think your privilege automatically makes you better than any other human being. However, I don't think it's something to be ignored. I don't necessarily think it's something to be ashamed of, because privilege to me it's an advantage. I don't think it's inherently bad. I'm trying to think if I think it's inherently good either. I think it's just all about how you use your privilege. Like, you are not, because I was about to say, like, say you were born to like a racist family. That's not a privilege. The only way that that's a privilege, I guess, is if they made a whole bunch of money off the backs of, you know, enslavement or something. But the privilege in that wouldn't be that. The privilege in that would be that you were born into a family that has generational wealth. And so because of that, I feel like privilege can always be a plus. I don't think there's many privileges that are inherently bad. They always have the ability, and I'm speaking in absolutes, but from feeling convicted wise, it can always be used to make one situation, other situation, whatever, better, but it can also be bad. I don't think it's inherently bad though. So I think that's about it. Yeah. So this is your sign to be self-aware. Don't let anybody guilt trip you into make you feel bad for having privilege. If you have privilege, you have privilege. It just is what it is. Just use it for good. Don't abuse nobody. Just don't let somebody make you feel bad for being ahead or having an advantage over something. If you start to abuse it, if you are misusing it or whatever, that's when you have an issue. So I want to talk more about about it and dig deeper stuff, but I feel like I'm gonna kind of go in circles. So maybe I'll do some research, read some books, make a Medium article, or come back and do a story time somehow around it, because I don't want to ramble. So if this resonated with you, awesome. If you have any comments, questions, if you can relate, if this did anything for you, just make sure you comment. Remember, if you want to support the channel, buy me a moment of peace. I'm gonna put my Ko-fi link in the description. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share. Remember, you create your own narrative. Until next time, bye, best friends.